And welcome to this extended edition of What's Important Now, the family under fire, why nations rise and fall on the home. Now, if you did not listen to the part 2 of Is America Dying series, it's loaded. And the reason I break it up is because that initial program is in a 30-minute block. It's prepared for FM radio. We have FM listeners, so but I can't get everything into that 30 minutes. So I like to do an extended version on platforms, podcasting platforms. So welcome to the extended version. Now, if you did, in fact, listen to that broadcast or that podcast, you know that we talked about the family being under fire. We talked about the collapse of the American home and, well, how it mirrors great empires in history. Those who fail to learn the lessons of history are doomed to repeat them. But here on this podcast, we're going to go deeper. Again, the radio gives us 30 minutes. It's always all we've got. The podcast gives us room to really peel back some layers, okay? So today, I want to show you something. History's lessons on family collapse, modern data that proves its impact, and the spiritual battle that is, well, without a doubt, behind it all. And then finally, what hope looks like if America chooses to restore the home. So, because as I often say, here's the truth. The nations of the world will rise and fall on the strength of their families. And if America doesn't wake up to that reality, we're going to walk the same road that Rome and others have walked before. So let's take a look at history, because no nation will collapse in isolation. If you look at Rome in its early days, as we said on the 30-minute podcast, Rome was famous for strong families. Fathers, they had authority. Children were disciplined. The duty to family was the duty to nation. It mirrored one another, and you see that a lot as you look back over history. You see the strengths. I often think about in America the generation of those individuals that stormed the beaches in World War II. And they had a purpose. They were going for not only their country and not only for their God, but for their families. It was really, really important to them. But if we take a look at Rome, as it grew wealthy and immorality increased, marriage lost its meaning, divorce began to rise. Some citizens married and divorced dozens of times in their lives. Dozens. I was trying to think, how do you have time for that? History teaches us this. They did. Dozens of times. Because it became so easy. Some citizens just kept doing it. And now think about this. What's happening in those multiple marriages where all these children are being born? Well, history, at least in Rome, when you look back, you find out that the children actually started to become a burden. And as I mentioned in our other podcast, some were actually abandoned and left to die. They were unwanted. Unbelievable. And so, as I've said, the family began to rot, and the empire began to rot. And when you study history, you find that the Roman Empire had multiple things working against it, and this happened to be one of them. When you look at America, and you have to try to answer the question, is America dying? Then you have to look to the family as one of the signs historically that when the family falls apart, the nation falls apart. So, let's take a look at ancient Israel. History tells us that when Israel obeyed God's design for family, they flourished, Parents were commanded to teach their children God's word and to do so diligently. When they rose, they were taught. When they walked, they were taught. When they sat down, this is the commandment that was given to them. They were taught. I recall when Joshua took them over the Jordan, God wanted them to get a stone to set up in their tents where they lived. He said, I want you to set that up so one day your children ask you, hey, Mom, hey, Dad, what's that stone? And you can begin to tell them how I brought you over, how I got you through. I think that's such a powerful thing. If you're like me, the majority, 98% of my adult life has been in ministry. And all of my adult life has been in some form of service. And I find it so amazing to look back and be able to share, not only with my children, but with others. That old song is, look what the Lord has done. It's just so powerful to be able to share what God has done in your life. And God instructed Israel to do that. And for a time they did. But when they abandoned God's instruction, they began to embrace idols. And we see families began to collapse, and ultimately with them the nation. And you can chart this history throughout not only the Old Testament, but historical record teaches that every single time they deviated from the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, well, things went south, and they went south really fast. Let's fast forward in history to the Industrial Revolution, where life shifted. Parents and children were working side by side to industrialize cities. Fathers left the homes for factories. Children went to crowded schools, and the family unit began to weaken. Not destroyed, but weakened. And then in the 1960s in America, the sexual revolution and no-fault divorce accelerated the collapse. And so now, for the first time, marriage wasn't viewed as permanent. Family structure became optional. We don't like to hear this. And I guarantee you that there's those out there that are offended by this. I'm just tracking history here. And within one generation, fatherlessness and broken homes skyrocketed. That wasn't the only thing happening in the 60s. That's when prayer and Bible reading were kicked out of schools. A simple prayer. I've said this a million times on this program. A simple prayer. And it's a sample prayer. They were not all like this, but this is a sample prayer of what kids prayed every morning. Just like most schools stand up and say the Pledge of Allegiance. This was a part of everyday school life. They would stand up and say, Almighty God, we acknowledge our dependence upon thee and pray for thy blessings upon us, our parents, our teachers, and our country. Very simple prayer. And I've studied that prayer, and I've looked into that prayer and everything that they prayed for there. Number one, they're acknowledging their dependence upon God. We do not exist without you. We have no future without you. There is no plan without you in our lives. From acknowledgement to prayer, a prayer of blessing upon them, the student, the child, their parents, the home, the family, their teachers. their country. And I've broken that prayer down, and I've looked at that prayer. And in every category where they prayed, there has been an upheaval, mass chaos. Statistically speaking. Coincidence? I think not. And so history proves over and over and over again that nations with strong families, they endure. Nations with weak families, they collapse. It's not an opinion, folks. It's history. So let's look at today. Because the data for today, it's not just alarming, it's devastating. Take a look at education. Kids from stable families are far more likely to graduate. Fact. Children from fatherless homes are twice as likely to drop out of school. What that means is, for them, less opportunity, less earning potential, and a weaker nation. What about the economics of this? Stable families build wealth that is passed down. They leave something for the next generation. Broken families, they perpetuate poverty. A single-parent household, for instance, often lives on one income. Stretched thin. And the cycles of poverty go from one generation to the next generation. What about health? Well, children in strong families have better emotional and physical health. Studies actually show higher rates of anxiety, depression, and substance abuse in homes without stability. And let me pause for a moment and say this, because I said it in the other program, the 30-minute program. I'm not knocking single parents. Many of them, as I said, are heroes. They've stepped up when someone else didn't. God bless them. Pray for them. What I'm saying is that there is a natural consequence when we deviate from God's plan. That's what I'm saying here. No matter what the circumstance is. And that's not saying that single parents can't raise children properly. I'm not saying that either. So please don't get that. Please don't take that away from what I'm saying. I'm simply telling you that statistically speaking, children are better off in multiple categories in a home where there is a mother and a father. Take a look at crime, for instance, and this one is undeniable. 85% of youth in prison come from fatherless homes. Children without fathers are at dramatically higher risk of to commit a violent crime. It's not just a correlation. It's cause and effect. Okay, let me say it plainly. Every metric we use to measure the health of a society, education, economy, health, or crime, is tied to the health of the family. You can't fix poverty without fixing families. You can't fix crime without fixing families. And you cannot build a strong nation on broken homes. We have to do better. But this isn't just social science. It's spiritual. Because the truth is, from the very beginning, God designed the family. If you go back and look at in the book of Genesis, he made Adam and Eve. He told them to be fruitful and to multiply. And he established the home as the foundation of human society. In Deuteronomy 6, God commanded parents to teach their children diligently. I talked to you about that a little bit already. The home was meant to be the first classroom of faith, the training ground of morality. Also, the safe place where children learn who they are and who God is. Listen, the confusion of our children's not coming from the confusion of our children. It's coming from adults who are confused because we're placing ideas in their head, whether it be through horrible media outlets. Social media is destroying our kids. It really is. They're learning. There's no doubt they're learning. Unfortunately, it's the wrong lessons in many cases. Not all cases, but in many cases. And so the home is supposed to be the safe place. And we know, we see the news. It's not always a safe place for kids. And thank God for, again, this is not bashing like non-traditional family structures, because thank God for people who step up and save the day for a lot of kids. A lot of kids, whether it's grandparents, great-grandparents, aunts, uncles, brothers, and sisters. There's all kinds of different family structures. But the kids, the developmental years are so important for a child. They're enduring so much more than in many generations children did not have to endure. And so the safe place is under attack. Satan, the devil, the enemy, whatever you want to call him, is attacking the family. And this is not a new scheme. Go back to Eden. What was the first thing he did? He drove a wedge between Adam and Eve. And then what happened to the next generation? Well, Cain murdered Abel. So from the start, the enemy's strategy has been very simple. It's clear to see. Destroy the family, and you can destroy everything else. And the strategy hasn't changed, folks. When we see gender confusion, marriage redefined, parental rights undermined, that's not random. That's spiritual warfare. It's the same attack, only with a modern disguise. No nation that rejects God's design for the family can survive for very long. Because when you destroy the family, you're actually destroying God's foundation for society itself. So I asked the question previously, is there any hope? This all sounds horrible. Is there hope for the family? Is there hope for America? Yes. But as I've said multiple times throughout this series already, it doesn't come from government. It doesn't come from Hollywood. It doesn't come from elections. It comes when parents reclaim what God has given, the plan that God has already put into place, the role of the family. When fathers walk back into a place of leadership, when they begin to protect and provide, when mothers, as I said, I've already said this, when they nurture and they teach, and then the role of the church. I'm sorry, I get so frustrated because the church was not ever called to entertain. We were never called to entertain. We were called to equip. And the lessons that make families strong, and the lessons that make schools and communities strong, and the lessons that makes a nation strong are silent. It's crickets. Because we're too busy entertaining. We're too busy trying to ensure that we fill the seats of our sanctuaries with people who, yes, are broken, but people who will promote our ministries and make us the next big TikTok superstar. God help us. God help us. Now, history does provide hope, ladies and gentlemen. And I mentioned it before, the Great Awakenings. Families were transformed. Husbands and wives, marriages became stronger. There was a recommitment to marriage. And parents started teaching their children faith again. Revival was in the home, and America was reshaped. And it can happen again. It can, ladies and gentlemen, happen again. But it has to start with us. It was a song years ago. I don't know how many years ago, not all that long ago, but it said, revival starts in me. And that's really what it is. Michael Jackson, I was watching a documentary on Katrina, Hurricane Katrina, and there was an individual that referenced the Michael Jackson song, Man in the Mirror. And no matter what you think of Michael Jackson, that is a true statement right there. I'm starting with the man in the mirror. And I'm asking him to make a change. And that's where it is. We have got revival's going to start in us. If we want our kids to pray, they're going to need to see us pray. If we want our kids to have strong marriages, they're going to need to be in a home that is a strong marriage. And God knows I have failed in so many ways. And again, this is not me just pointing fingers. I'm saying we must do better. And we can. And I know that some of our issues and some of our problems are super complex, right? We all have stuff. And we can't fix it on our own. I'm currently working through a sermon series about from Hebrews chapter 12 verse 1 about laying aside the weight and the sin that was so easily ensnare, entangle, or beset us, hold us back, keep us from running the race that God has set before us. There's a purpose for your life. There's a purpose for your family's life. God has a plan for you. God has a plan for your family. There is a race. There is a mission that has been set out in front of you, but we are so entangled with all kinds of stuff that we're weighted down and held back and slowed up, and we're not walking and running, I should say, in the freedom that God has called us to run in. There is hope. Yes, absolutely, there is hope. But we got to start with the one in the mirror, and we got to start making some changes. It can happen again. Revival can happen again. Not out there, right here. In our homes, in our communities, and in our churches. Because I really do believe that if the family rises, America has a future. But if the family falls, America is finished. So here's the question. I know I've asked several questions, haven't I? But as we close this out, we have to ask, will we learn from history or will we repeat it? Rome collapsed because its families collapsed. Israel fell when its families abandoned God. So the question is, what will America do? The choice, well, it's ours. It starts with us. It starts with you, and it starts with me. The time is now. This is the battle for the soul of America. There is a weapon. Listen to me now. I'm almost finished. There is a weapon formed against America, but it's not the weapon you think. The weapon has actually been formed to destroy our families, our communities, and our churches so that truth is no longer told. the weapon is formed. But I serve a God who said that there's no weapon that can prosper. The only way the weapon formed prospers is if we don't stand up in the God-given strength that he has given us and oppose the evil of our day, because it is evil. It is. On the next episode, I'm going to talk about the death of civic virtue. How we went from responsibility to entitlement. But today our families are at the forefront. Today our families, well, that's what's important now. And so if this episode spoke to you, please make sure you subscribe to What's Important Now. Again, on any podcasting platform, Apple, Spotify, whatever, wherever you listen, it's fine. We're on all of them. But share it with someone that you know needs to hear it. Because it's more than commentary. It's a call to action. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks for being a part of What's Important Now. Fight the good fight of faith. Contend for the faith. There is a cause. It does matter. And it is important now. It is my absolute honor and pleasure to be here with you. As we go out, I'm going to play. This music you hear in the background is my daughter, Brianna Megan, Christian singer-songwriter. And this is her song titled Testimony from her second album. Also can be found on Apple Music or other platforms as well. But anyway, I want to play it because I think it speaks to what we're talking about here. And it has a part that just where she says, so keep on fighting, because this is not the end. And it's not, ladies and gentlemen. There is hope for our future. There is hope for your future. May God bless you.